I think we have an ungrounded perspective on what intimacy is. And we think that intimacy just means pleasure all the time. But actually, I think intimacy is being able to do hard things together. I think intimacy is about not dropping one another when there's tension. It means being in the tension with another human being without needing to immediately fix ourselves or fix the other person or fix the problem. Hey everyone, I'm Thais Sky. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. Hello, all of you beautiful humans. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim, the podcast where we have conversations that matter. I am your host. I am a life coach. I am a writer and speaker, and I talk a lot about worth. My work is centered around healing and the worthiness wound, which is a framework that I've created to help us understand what it means to feel inadequate and how we can reclaim our worth in the world. And I am here with you for part 9 of the Reclaiming Worth series. I'm so excited to be here with you all. This episode is going to be really, really good. It's intimacy and relationships. And, one of the things that's really important for me in my work is supporting women navigate interpersonal relationships, not just intimate relationships, but yes, that too. We are not living in vacuums, right? So much of our childhood wounding, trauma, pain, and suffering comes because of how other people treated us. And so I find that some of the greatest invitations, the greatest work that we are being asked to do comes up because of our interpersonal challenges. And so, of course, when we're talking about worthiness, we have to talk about relationships because, again, our healing doesn't exist in a vacuum. Feeling worthy, cultivating worthiness, healing our worthiness wound, however way you want to call it, it's not going to happen by you meditating in a cave and then coming back to the real world, and you're going to be never going to be triggered by or activated by somebody's behavior again. That's not how that works. In fact, I think I've told this little story before, so if I haven't, you've heard it, pardon moi, but it's the story of a man who went to India, and he was there for 10, 20 years meditating and living in ashrams, and he really found what he considered to be enlightened. He really found a deeper sense of understanding within himself, and he decided it was finally time to come back to the United States. And he came back around the time of Thanksgiving. And the first, day that the whole family was gathered for Thanksgiving, he realized just quite how not enlightened he was. And that's the whole point, right? Is that if we're not seeing changes in our relationships because of the work that we're doing, then the work that we're doing isn't really, it's not that it's not work, or it's not that it's not important, or it's not that it's not working. It's just something to get curious about, because ideally this work impacts all of our relationships for the better. I mean, the work that I have seen to really support me is allowing me to cultivate deeper intimacy within my relationships, asking myself how I can be more expressive, how I can share my feelings more, how I can be more honest about what is coming up within me, being more vulnerable, being more interconnected. And so, as you may have heard, this whole series is in honor of the doors opening to my group program, Worthy Women Rise. Worthy Women Rise is a 4-month journey of exploring how we can tend to the worthiness wound so we can rise up into our most expressed self. And we do a lot of work on relationships. There's a whole module where we talk about attachment and how to cultivate intimacy within our relationships. Again, not necessarily our intimate partnerships, but that as well. And one of the things that the group offers, simply by the fact that it is a group, an online group program, is a corrective experience of what it's like to surround ourselves with a group of women who are on a similar journey as us. So many of past participants have shared that doing this work within a group was one of their most powerful takeaways, because they started to relate to the women in the group in a way that allowed them to see themselves in a different way. And I think that that's such a powerful component of Worthy Women Rise, is that we start to untangle some of the ways that we've learned how to relate to other women. Because let's be honest here, many of us weren't taught how to be good friends for one another. And in fact, we've been very much conditioned to distrust other women. This is particularly true in corporate culture, where there's a lot of animosity between the older women in the environment, in the company, and the younger women. We're not taught to really trust one another. It's kind of like we were fed this lie that there's a limited resource available in the world and we have to compete with one another. And in some ways that's true. There is a limited resource of positions and jobs, at least 50 years ago, when women were slowly coming into the workforce. And now things have changed, and now we started to see, and I think more reclaim this knowing that actually so much of what we're desiring and craving in the world are intimate relationships with other women. But then it's like, how do we do that? How do we support one another and witness one another and honor one another's sovereignty? And I'm going to share some of my thoughts around that in a minute. But I think, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that we need each other. Not only biologically we need each other because we're social beings, but we need each other on an ecological level, on an understanding that if we don't work together, if we don't collaborate together, if we don't learn how to witness each other and hold space for one another, then we're risking further destruction of our planet. Coming together is, and problem solving, it's the only way our planet is going to survive. Taking that ecological approach. But so much of what we've learned about relationships is very transactional. It's what can I get from you? And I admit that this was me for a very long time. In fact, this is the reason why I didn't go into psychology for a long time. Even though I had a deep knowing that I was ultimately going to end up in a field of mental health, of supporting other people, of service, of psychology. For a long time, I resisted against that because I just didn't like other people. I didn't want to talk to you. If I measured people by whether or not they were going to be able to add to my life. Very transactional. Are they going to give me an interesting conversation? If not, then why am I going to talk to them on the plane if I'm never going to see them again? Right? So it became a deeper recognition that I had of oh my gosh, I'm seeing everybody as transactional when I started liking myself. The more I started to befriend and tend to myself and my own needs, the more I started to see, oh, wait a minute. It's not that I don't like people. It's that I've been taught to distrust people because how I relate to people has been transactional because I was worried I was not going to get my needs met. And the more I've been able to meet my own needs and communicate the needs that I need, the more I've been able to trust people and the more I've been able to understand that the way in which we are going to be able to move forward in the world is through an ecological perspective, where we are all interconnected, where we need one another, where there has to be a way that we can hold one another even in our pain in order for healing to occur. And so that's part of the experience of Worthy Women Rise. And like I've been saying in the other parts of the series, if you're interested in learning more about Worthy Women Rise, you can go to worthywomenrise.com. Doors close February 13th. So that's less than a week away. And it is an application process. And the reason why I do an application is because I want to make sure that the group that I'm creating is able to hold that ecological perspective. And so there are things that I look for to make sure that the group is diverse and intersectional and filled with different identities, but also holds the same values. So that why I'm sharing that with you is that it's important for you to get that application in before next Wednesday if you want to join us for this round of Worthy Women Rise. And before I move forward, I just want to share some words of a woman who attended Worthy Women Rise in the last cohort. She shared some beautiful words that I would like to repeat here for you all. So Jane shares with me, I loved the experience that you created in Worthy Women Rise. In fact, Worthy Women Rise is unlike any other self-development program I have done. In the beginning, when you set up the ground rules, telling us what you expected from us and how you expected us to show up, that was amazing. From the beginning, it felt like such a loving and supportive group. I've never been part of a group or self-development program like this where it was explicitly said not to share/provide feedback unless someone asks for it. To be able to show up and just be seen and witnessed versus feeling like someone is trying to fix me or solve my problems was a revelation and really showed me where I had work to do in my own life. Your ability to be kind, funny, compassionate, direct, discerning, and simply brilliant is unique, and I have treasured this time together. Thank you for all of the work you put into this program. I will be forever grateful and forever changed because of it. Not perfect, not quote there, end quote, and not looking to be either anymore. See, this is what I love about Worthy Women Rise, is that the women leave the program knowing that they don't need to be their idealized version of themselves in order to be happy. They understand that at a soul level. It's like they've come to an understanding of their identity, of who they are in the world, that doesn't have to be constantly changed and tweaked. And because they hold that perspective, they can then experience the next level of transformation and change that comes from a wholeness instead of a lack. I love this program. I'm passionate about it. It's my master. It's where I pour my mastery into. I cannot wait for the 6th cohort. And so again, if you're interested, please consider joining us, and you can learn more at worthywomenrise.com. Okay, so let's get into intimacy, and let's talk a little bit about what intimacy means and interconnection. There was a Facebook ad that I was exposed to once where it was like, go from codependent to independent. And codependent is a word that I know has become very popularized. Thanks to programs like Al-Anon, we're starting to understand more and more the dangers of codependency and how codependency enables the people in our lives to continue to create problems and problematic behavior. And I love that. I love that we're understanding that codependency isn't the answer. And oftentimes we've missed in our heads, missed the mark when we say that codependency equals attachment. And it's not, right? Codependency is a shadow side of attachment. It's not a healthy dynamic of attachment. And then it's important to understand that the opposite of codependency is not independency. The idea of being independent kind of feeds into our individualistic narrative of our culture that tells us that we don't need anybody. And so when we're looking at codependency as a shadow of attachment, it's very easy to then think that the opposite of codependency is to then not need anybody. The opposite of attachment wounds is to not attach at all, right? And we're terrified that if we attach that we will be let down. And so then we're like, great, I'm not going to need anybody. How many of us have acted that way or proclaimed that or behaved in that manner in a relationship or all of our relationships, this fear of needing somebody. And so we completely detach. We say, I don't need you. And we are so scared of vulnerability and intimacy that we keep people away with a 10-foot pole. Well, I'm here to tell you that the opposite of codependency or the shadow of attachment is not independence, but interconnectedness. It's about learning how to be healthily attached to other people where we're still maintaining the integrity and boundaries of our own being and maintaining the integrity and independence of the the integrity of the other person's sovereignty, and also needing one another. Because we need one another. We need one another. Attachment is our biological function. We are created for thousands of years to need one another. And so this idea of independency is a shadow form of attachment as well, because it perpetuates this idea that needing somebody is a sign of weakness. Well, let me tell you what, that is a wild lie. It's a wild lie that keeps us feeling isolated and alone. It keeps us from seeking help. It keeps us in a state of brittleness. It's not the answer. It's time for us to find a healthy way to attach, a way to attach not built from our worthiness wound, not built from a needing each other in the sense of like, I can't function without you. Because there's a difference between love and enmeshment. And I think in our culture, because we're not talking about attachment in a healthy way, because we're talking about the spectrum being codependency or independent, we tend to also think of love as enmeshment. Love means that you accept every part of me. Love means that you cannot disagree with me. Love means that you cannot really grow independently of me. Because if you do any of those things, it violates my understanding of who I am, right? That's enmeshment. We're so enmeshed emotionally to the other person that we cannot be our own person and they cannot be their own person, or else it threatens our sense of self. Love is not enmeshment. One of the ways that this comes up, right, is this idea that like we get into an argument with our partner and our partner says like, you need to understand me. Like, why don't you understand me? And we think that in order for it to be really love, we have to understand that person. We have to understand where they're coming from. But that's actually not the case. I don't need to understand you in order to honor your boundary and honor your needs and honor what you're asking for. I don't actually need to understand. I may not understand. I may not understand why this is important to you, but can I honor that this is important to you? We often think that we require that understanding, but actually what we require is respect, is a healthy level of attachment. Another narrative that gets kind of fed in the whole independence thing is this idea that like if you perfect yourself, if you love yourself, then and only then will you be able to love other people, right? Like in order to manifest your perfect relationship, you just need to perfect yourself, right? And here's again, it's not the full picture. I have yet to see that you cannot be loved if you don't love yourself. Will the relationship fully thrive in its entire capacity if you don't love yourself? Maybe not. But it's not true that no one will love you unless you love yourself. In fact, it's been those moments where I was at the lowest of the low and I was experiencing so much self-hate that I experienced people's love in such a tremendous way. And it was their love that reminded me of the love that I can have for myself. And so sometimes we need that. So again, it's not either or, it's both and. We can cultivate love for ourselves, and in that way we will show up more powerfully in a relationship, and we're allowed to be loved, and we're allowed to, love can come to us even when we're not necessarily feeling worthy of it. And so understanding that love isn't enmeshment and understanding the ways that we fall into the narrative of enmeshment is really helpful and important, not only in this work, but in the conversation of boundaries that I talked about 2 episodes ago. Think about how our culture perpetuates enmeshment. Just think about our wedding vows and the sense of oneness. It's coming from a good place, to become one. And I think that is very possible through intimacy to develop a sense of oneness, but it's not coming from a grounded place of being fully in our sovereignty. And as much as it's coming from a place of, if we can be one person, then we'll never have to be in disagreement, and then we will be perfect. It's really coming from that place, isn't it? And I think that's the orientation so many of us have in relationships, with friendships and even coworkers and bosses, is like, if we are fully on the same page, then no rupture can happen. I am safe because I can't handle conflict. Conflict means something's wrong here. We have to be always in sync fully, or else it means that you don't really love me. And so in a conflict-averse culture, like the one that we have, it's ironic because there's conflict everywhere. But the reason why there's conflict everywhere is because we're not taught how to navigate conflict, because we live in a conflict-averse culture, right? We go for enmeshment instead of love. This is something I'm very passionate about. I deeply believe that conflict is healthy in relationships. I think conflict is important. I think conflict doesn't equal fighting and yelling and screaming at each other and hurting one another. I think conflict is basically just 2 individuals coming together and trying to understand each other and trying to navigate, the inevitable difficulties of being individuals in relationships. I've had a whole conversation with my dear friend about how there's love languages, but why isn't there conflict languages? And wouldn't it be really helpful to have language of like how you handle conflict, so that when we come together, we know what that looks like? I love conflict. And let me be clear here. I'm saying I love conflict fully admitting that I am conflict averse, just like everybody else. Like, I hate confrontations. But I'm doing the work and recognizing again and again that actually so much beauty lies in conflict. Because that's when we really start to individuate and be in integrity with our sovereignty and the sovereignty of other people. Okay, so since love is an enmeshment, it's, I think, important that we understand that means that intimacy isn't about rainbows and cookies and butterflies. It's not this sense of like, I think we have just like, what am I trying to say? I think we have an ungrounded perspective on what intimacy is. And we think that intimacy just means pleasure all the time. But actually, I think intimacy is being able to do hard things together. I think intimacy is about not dropping one another when there's tension. It means being in the tension with another human being without needing to immediately fix ourselves or fix the other person or fix the problem. Because we need each other. And in order for us to really create an ecological understanding of ourselves and the planet, it's important not to drop one another. I see so often this idea that like if a person doesn't agree with you politically, you need to drop them and completely cut them out of their lives. But like you as a person close to them have the best opportunity to slowly, to be there for them, to listen to them, and to slowly show them, a different perspective. We have to do that for each other. We can't just drop each other the minute something gets uncomfortable. And I see us, moving through friendships like Pokemon cards, like just trading them in and out. The minute things get hard, we just run. Again, I'm coming to you completely admitting that, hello, this is me. So often it would be easier for me to just trade a new friendship than to be in the tension with somebody else. But intimacy is being able to do hard things together. It means not losing ourselves while also fully immersing ourselves with another individual. Being vulnerable, being real, being raw, but not losing our boundaries, not losing our sense of self. And this is so hard, particularly when the worthiness wound is at play. Because the worthiness wound tells us that we are inadequate and that we are broken. And so that is then why we go to enmesh into other people. Because just like our better half, right? We hope that by enmeshing that they will take away our inadequacy. If they love us hard enough, we will never feel inferior. We will never feel inadequate again. How many of us have tried to use relationships to fix us? If they truly loved us and if we're truly in love, then I will never feel like shit. And then we quickly see that that's not the case. That relationships actually bring up some of our worst shit. And that's okay. There's so much magic in relationships and helping us heal and individuate and step into our sovereignty. But we have to choose that route. We can't fall into the paradigm of enmeshment. So like I had a conflict with my partner, and it was a beautiful conversation where we both admitted that like we were both feeling the same way about each other. He was feeling very angry at me because, I didn't respond in this way and I didn't do it in this way and I didn't support him the way he wanted me to support him. And I was upset with him because he didn't support me the way I wanted him and he didn't see me the way I wanted him to see me. And, we could get caught up in how he's the problem or I'm the problem and we need to fix the other person. But then I was able to like raise a little white flag and say, you know what? We're both feeling the same way. We're both feeling rejected and abandoned by the other person. So can we sit in this tension together and not drop each other in the process? Can we both recognize that we're feeling the same way? So the problem isn't the other person. It's just we're both having the same experience. So can we have it together? Can we not pathologize one another? Can we not problematize, the other person and instead just sit with the fact that we are both feeling this? And that's intimacy. You see that? And then it's like, okay, but then how do you fix the problem? Sometimes there's the problem. The way to fix the problem is just to name that we're both hurt and just be in that hurt together and witness each other and bear witness to the pain. And that's it. That is sometimes enough, because when we can bear witness to each other's pain, when we see each other in our pain, when we see ourselves reflected in the other person in our pain, we start to grow up. We become more mature. We become more spacious. And in that place, we can problem solve from a higher level of discernment than when we're in our triggered attachment wound pattern. Okay? So we're going to fail each other. We're going to drop each other. We need each other. Let's not drop each other. But hey, also, let's admit, we are going to fucking drop each other, because we're imperfect humans trying to have these beautiful dynamic relationships, and people are different than us, and we don't know how to navigate these differences, and we are going to fail each other. But maybe we can meet each other there. Maybe we don't have to dismiss the whole person because of our pain. Maybe we can do hard things together. And so part of Jane's testimony of Worthy Women Rise, right, is this idea of like, oh my gosh, like you held this container where we didn't give each other advice. And that's one of the 3 ways that I invite us to fall more into a consent-based relationship with anybody in our lives. And the first one is to not give advice. And this is a rule that I really hold true in Worthy Women Rise. And when someone gives advice, I really get curious as to like why they're feeling so uncomfortable with what that person shared, because that's what's happening when we give advice. When we give advice, what we're essentially saying is, I can't hold your pain. I need it to be fixed. I need it to be gone. Here, do this. The only exception to this rule, of course, is when the person asks us for advice. If a person say, hey, I'm lost, I don't know what to do. Do you have any thoughts for me? What would you do? Okay, they're asking for it, right? They're consenting to you giving advice. But 99% of the times, we're not asked to be given advice, and we just do it anyway because we can't tolerate the pain, the discomfort of their pain. So really, when we're giving advice, we're dishonoring their sovereignty by making it be about us. We're making it be about us because we're not able to hold their pain. When we give advice, we're taking away the attention from that person who's wounded to our own wounding. And so the work here of intimacy is to be able to bear witness of somebody else's pain without having to fix it. And wherever we feel limited in that, we name that with ourselves, or if it's appropriate with the other person. And there's whole methods that I teach in Worthy Women Rise around how to do this. But it's just important that we stop dehumanizing one another. Like, people know how to best lead their lives. Like, people are really brilliant. They will problem solve. They will figure it out. Why they're coming to you 9 times out of 10 is just because they want to be heard. They want to just be heard. Why are we so quick to take away other people's pain? They're allowed to sit in their discomfort. And I know that it sucks, especially as parents watching children be in pain. Like, we have this illusion that we're supposed to protect our children from hurt, from pain. But the fact of the matter is, we're not. The world is painful. It's going to happen. Instead, we are invited to teach them how to deal with their pain. And part of how to deal with the pain is to be able to sit with it. So can we do that for each other as adults now in our intimate relationships? Okay? So no to giving advice unless it's specifically asked for. And the same, respecting our own sovereignty, the same is the case for the opposite. If you're with a friend and you're sharing your pain and they start giving advice, like, say something. You know what? I'm not actually looking for advice. I'm looking for you to just hear me. Can you do that for me? Stand up for yourself. I know this is hard. I'm right there with you. But this is a way that we honor our own boundaries. Okay? And teach other women how to relate to each other and to ourselves, or men and women, all of us humans. Okay, the next thing is asking permission to talk about the heavy things. And this is especially true when we're really troubled by something that's happening in a relationship. Can we, before we just dump in, can we say, hey, like, I want to talk about something that's been going on. Do you have the capacity to talk right now? Is this a good time? Even if it's like not about the relationship and it's about your own pain, like asking before you just dump your pain onto somebody else is really how we can practice consent here. Because it means we're being mindful of the other person's mental health. We're not just assuming that they can hold the stuff that we are about to share, right? And so I like to ask permission always if I'm about to enter a heavy conversation. I think that this is a way that we can respect one another and that we can practice restraint on ourselves, right? That we can't just bulldoze other people. And so engaging in this in partnership, having a conversation with your intimate partner and establishing this new norm can be a great way that both of you can start to create a container of safety within the relationship. And this is such an imperative part of cultivating healthy attachments. Okay. The third most important thing, the third important thing is respecting other people's boundaries. Listen, we have this demand that everybody respects our boundaries, right? But how often do we actually respect other people's boundaries? Boundaries is confronting. It is so hard when somebody says, you know what, that's not okay, or I'm not okay with that, or please don't do that. Oh my gosh, it's so confronting. We are directly asked to sit with our inadequacy and our worthiness wound, right? Like, it's really, really rough, but that's where the work begins. Because if somebody's telling us how they want us to treat them, it's important that we listen. And so wherever you have resistance to that, wherever you have judgments for that, wherever, you have anything come up for you, it's just, again, it's an invitation to get curious, because of course people aren't perfect at setting boundaries, and they may have boundaries that you don't understand. But again, it's not about you understanding, it's about you respecting their needs. And of course you can ask questions if you would like. Just because someone says, hey, don't do this, doesn't mean you just have to be silent about it. Of course you can ask, like, may I ask why this is a boundary, or can I ask behind your reasoning for this? And if they say, no, I'm not comfortable in sharing that, then we have to respect that. And if they are willing to share, then great. We're not asking, though, because we're trying to find a loophole in their boundary. We're asking because we want to become more intimate in the relationship, right? And intimacy is what? It's about being able to do hard things together. Respecting each other's boundaries is part of that. Boundaries is a complicated subject. We talked about it in part 6. So if you haven't listened to that, go listen to that. I have many more things to say on boundaries. And in Worthy Women Rise, I teach a lot of tools on how to navigate boundaries. It's not black or white. But I think we have such a hard time respecting other people's boundaries because it brings up where we're lacking boundaries. And I think it's really important that we get curious around that. We need each other, so let's not drop each other, okay? Let's be here for one another, and that means learning new ways of relating where the whole human can show up, just like you want your whole human to be able to show up in the relationship. All right, I hope this was of use to you. I love you all. Thank you for being on this journey with me. I've been having a really good time recording these episodes. I hope that you can tell. I hope that you are... that you're enjoying it. I'm getting into my groove here. I'm trying to think of how else I can start to share more of myself on the podcast. My podcast is predominantly interviews, and I'm brainstorming ways that I can bring more of this. I have a 3-part series, a mini 3-part series on intimacy on Patreon. So if you're enjoying the conversation of intimacy, you can go check that out. You can join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and all the money goes directly into supporting the existence of the podcast. This is how I can keep my podcast ad-free, and it would just mean the world to me if you supported me there. And you can also get the intimacy stuff there. But what I was thinking of doing is actually opening myself up to answering your questions. So asking for questions from you all around worthiness, around your life, around relationships, intimacy, whatever's coming up for you. And then I will answer it on the podcast. So I've been thinking of how I want to do that. If this is something that you are interested in, I would love to hear from you. You can private message me or message me on Instagram. You can email my team at info@ThaisSky. You can send me your questions there, or send me an email with your questions. And let me know what you think and if that will be of use to you. And maybe I will start doing that when the regular reclaim part, wow, Thais, words here. When the rest of the reclaim episodes go live with my amazing interviewers, you're going to get some really amazing stuff next week. So stay tuned. I'm releasing part 5 on Monday. Doors close for Worthy Women Rise on Wednesday, and we get started Sunday night. So if you have any questions about Worthy Women Rise, go to worthywomenrise.com and you can email me at info@ThaisSky. I'm sending you all my love, and I will talk to you soon.